Listen to me carefully. Sometimes the best revenge isn't loud. It isn't dramatic. It isn't traumatic. It isn't posting quotes on social media or trying to prove a point. The strongest move you can ever make is silence. When someone loses you and they think you beg, chase, or break, that's when you show them who you really are. First thing you do, you level up quietly. Boom. You level up quietly. You don't announce it. You don't broadcast it. You just get better. Better physically, better mentally, better financially. Better financially. You go to the gym, you read, you focus on your goals. And one day they look up and realize the person they thought would fall apart is glowing. Success makes noise, but the grind is silent. Second, you stop explaining yourself. People who misunderstood you once will misunderstand you again. Stop trying to convince folks of your value. Your worth is not a group discussion. When you remove your need for validation, you become powerful. Silence says, I know who I am. Third, you remove access. You can't heal in the same environment that hurt you. That means no late night texts, no just checking on you, no keeping tabs on their stories. Distance creates clarity. And when they no longer have access to your energy, your laughter, your support, that's when absence starts speaking for you. Fourth, you master emotional control. Nothing shocks people more than your calmness. They expect anger. They expect tears. They expect drama. But when you respond with grace and composure, it unsettles them. Why? Because they realize you're no longer attached to the chaos. Emotional discipline is strength. Fifth, you become genuinely happy, not fake happy, not revenge happy. Real peace. Where you move on without bitterness, where you smile without forcing it, where you build a life that fulfills you. That's when regret hits them the hardest. Nobody expects you to win quietly. And finally, you let time do its job. Time reveals value. When they go through new situations and realize what you brought to the table, loyalty, love, stability, they'll compare, and comparison creates regret. But by then, you've already moved forward. You don't make people regret losing you by trying to make them jealous. You make them regret it by becoming someone they can no longer reach. Your silence becomes your statement. Your growth becomes your response. Listen to me. When somebody walks away from you, the first instinct most people have is to react, to post something, to call them, to defend themselves, to prove they were right. But let me tell you something. The most powerful move you can ever make is silence, not weakness, not ignoring your feelings. I'm talking about controlled, disciplined silence, because when you respond with noise, you lower your value. When you respond with growth, you increase it. One of the most silent ways to make someone regret losing you is to level up without announcing it. See, too many people want to show their improvement before they've actually improved. They want to post gym selfies on day 3. They want to talk about new goals they haven't committed to. Real growth doesn't talk. Real growth works. You wake up earlier, you start reading instead of scrolling. You hit the gym even when you don't feel like it. You learn new skills. You focus on your career. You tighten your circle. And you don't tell the world you're doing it. You just do it. Because here's what happens. The person who walked away expects you to fall apart. They expect you to be stuck. They expect you to be the same person they left. And when months pass and they see you moving different, looking different, carrying yourself different, that's when it hits them. You didn't just survive without them, you evolved. Another silent move is refusing to explain yourself. Stop trying to make people understand your value after they have already shown you they didn't see it. Your worth is not something you argue about. If somebody couldn't recognize your loyalty, your support, your love when they had it. A speech won't change that. Silence says more than a paragraph ever could. When you stop defending yourself, you communicate confidence. And confidence is attractive. Confidence makes people question their decisions. Then there's emotional control. This one is hard because when someone hurts you, you feel it. And it's real. But strength is not about pretending you don't feel pain. Strength is about managing it. You don't send an angry text. You don't create drama. You don't try to hurt them back. You process your emotions privately. You pray, you journal, you work out, you talk to a trusted friend, but you don't explode publicly. When you remain calm, you shift the power dynamic. The person who expected chaos now sees composure, and composure forces reflection. Another silent way is removing access, not in a childish way, not blocking just to get attention. I'm talking about real boundaries. No late night, I miss you. Conversations, no checking their social media, no responding instantly to every message. Access to you is a privilege. When someone loses you, they lose the benefit of your presence, your advice, your encouragement, your affection. And when that access disappears, they start to feel the absence. Absence creates space for memory, and memory often creates regret. You also focus on building genuine happiness, not the kind that's designed to make someone jealous. Real happiness, you try new experiences, you strengthen friendships, you reconnect with passions you neglected, you pour into yourself spiritually and mentally. When you're truly happy, it shows in your energy. You walk differently. You speak differently. You don't look like someone who lost. You look like someone who gained clarity. And nothing makes a person question their choice more than seeing you at peace without them. And finally, you let time do its work. Time reveals what people took for granted. When they enter new situations and don't receive the same respect, loyalty, or understanding you gave them, comparison begins. But by then, you're no longer waiting. You're no longer hoping. You've moved forward. And that's the real power. You didn't grow to make them regret losing you. You grew because you deserve better. The regret is just a byproduct of your elevation. Now, let's talk about something that most people struggle with after being left behind, the need for validation. When someone walks out of your life, especially someone you gave your time, love, and effort to, there's this deep urge inside you to make them understand what they just lost. You want to explain your intentions. You want to remind them of everything you did for them. You want them to see your heart the way you believe they once did. But here's the truth that hurts people who didn't value you when they had direct access to. You are not going to suddenly understand your worth because you sent a long message. One of the most silent and powerful ways to make someone regret losing you is by no longer seeking their validation. Stop needing them to agree with your perspective. Stop needing closure that they're not mature enough to give. Stop hoping they will wake up one day and apologize in the exact way you imagined. Your healing cannot be dependent on someone else's realization, because the moment your peace relies on their apology, their acknowledgement, or their regret, you're still emotionally attached to the same place that hurt you. When you stop explaining yourself, something changes inside you. When you begin to trust your own judgment again, you stop replaying conversations in your mind trying to figure out what you could have said differently. You stop carrying the burden of proving that you were loyal, that you were genuine, that you truly cared. You understand that your actions spoke for themselves. And if someone chose not to listen, that's their loss, not your responsibility to correct. Silence in this situation is not about bitterness. It's about self-respect. It's about realizing that your worth does not increase when someone finally sees it. You were always valuable. Their inability to recognize it doesn't make you less, it simply reveals their limitations. And when you stop chasing validation from people who couldn't appreciate you, you begin to attract environments where your presence is celebrated instead of tolerated. There's a quiet confidence that comes from no longer needing approval. You walk into rooms without wondering who likes you and who doesn't. You make decisions without constantly seeking reassurance. You stop overthinking your worth in relationships, friendships, even professional spaces. That inner stability becomes visible. People notice when you're no longer desperate to be understood. They notice when you're comfortable being misunderstood by those who never took the time to understand you in the first place. And the person who lost you notices it too. They expected you to argue, to defend yourself, to plead your case. But when you simply move forward without demanding their acknowledgement, it creates curiosity. It creates reflection. They begin to question whether they misjudged you, whether they underestimated your strength, whether they took your presence for granted. The moment you stop asking, do they see my value now? And start telling yourself, I know my value regardless, you take your power back. You're no longer waiting for someone else to define your importance. You define it through your standards, your boundaries, and the way you carry yourself every single day. Because at the end of the day, validation from the wrong person is a temporary comfort, but self-validation is permanent peace. And peace is something nobody can take from you once you've earned it within yourself. Another silent way to make someone regret losing you is by mastering emotional control. And let's be honest, this is one of the hardest things to do when you've been hurt. Because when someone disappoints you, betrays your trust, or walks away like your presence meant nothing, your emotions don't just disappear. You feel anger, you feel sadness, you feel confusion. There are nights when your mind keeps replaying memories, conversations, promises that were never kept. And in those moments, everything inside you wants to react. You want to send that message. You want to ask why. You want to express how much pain they caused. Sometimes you even want them to hurt the way you hurt. But emotional discipline is about choosing not to act on every feeling that rises inside you. Just because you feel something doesn't mean you have to respond. D to it immediately. Strength is found in the pause between what you feel and what you decide to do next. When you react out of emotion, you often give away your power. You say things you can't take back. You show wounds that someone else may not deserve to see. And more importantly, you confirm their expectations. If they believed you were overly emotional, dramatic, or unable to function without them, then reacting in anger or desperation reinforces that belief. But when you remain calm, even when you're hurting, you create a different narrative. Calmness doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care about yourself enough to protect your peace. It means you understand that your healing process is private, and not every battle needs to be fought out loud. You learn to sit with your emotions instead of letting them control you. You give yourself time to think before speaking. You allow yourself to process pain in ways that don't involve destroying your dignity. This kind of emotional control changes the way people perceive you They expected chaos, but they see composure. They expected arguments, but they see silence. They expected breakdowns, but they see stability. And that contrast forces them to reflect. Because the version of you they thought they knew doesn't match the version of you they're seeing now. There's also something deeply unsettling about someone who can walk away from pain with grace, not pretending everything is okay, but refusing to let pain turn into bitterness. When you don't lash out, when you don't seek revenge, when you don't engage in unnecessary conflict, it shows maturity. It shows growth. And maturity often highlights the immaturity of those who chose to leave without understanding your value. Over time, your emotional discipline becomes your shield. You don't get easily triggered. You don't chase explanations that will only reopen wounds. You don't waste energy trying to change someone's opinion of you. Instead, you invest that energy into becoming stronger, wiser, more self-aware. And as you grow, you begin to realize that not every loss is a tragedy. Some losses are necessary for your evolution. The person who walked away may not understand your silence immediately. They may even mistake it for indifference, but eventually they notice the consistency in your calmness. They notice that you didn't fall apart the way they expected. They notice that you handled the situation with more strength than they gave you credit for. And that's when the questions begin in their mind. That's when reflection turns into realization. Because nothing makes someone reconsider their decision more than seeing the person they underestimated handle pain with quiet strength and dignity. One of the most powerful, silent moves you can make after someone loses you is learning how to remove access. And I don't mean in a dramatic way where you're trying to punish someone or get their attention. I'm talking about real intentional distance that protects your healing. Because the truth is, you cannot recover from a wound if you keep allowing the thing that hurt you to touch it. A lot of people say they want to move on, but they keep the door slightly open. They still respond to late night messages. They still check social media profiles just to see what the other person is doing. They still answer calls out of habit, even when they know it's going to disturb their peace. And every time you do that, you reset your healing process. You remind yourself of what you're trying to let go of. Removing access means understanding that your energy is valuable. Your time is valuable. Your attention is valuable. And not everyone deserves unlimited entry into your emotional space. When someone walks away from you or shows you they don't, appreciate your presence, continuing to offer them the same level of access only teaches them that losing you has no real consequences. Silence becomes powerful when your absence starts speaking louder than your words ever did. When they can't reach you as easily as before. When your name doesn't appear in their notifications. When your voice is no longer available to comfort them after a hard day. When your encouragement, your laughter, your advice, all the things you once gave freely are no longer there. That's when they begin to feel the difference. People often don't realize your value while you constantly available. Familiarity can create comfort, and comfort can create complacency. They assume you'll always be there. They assume you'll forgive quickly. They assume you'll respond no matter what happens. But when access is removed, reality sets in. They begin to notice the silence where your presence used to be. This isn't about playing games or creating mystery. It's about establishing boundaries that protect your mental and emotional health. Boundaries are not punishments for others. They are protection for yourself. You're not refusing access to hurt someone. You're refusing access because you deserve the time and space to rebuild without interference. Distance also gives you clarity. When you're no longer in constant contact with someone who hurt you, your thoughts become less clouded. You stop romanticizing the past. You stop minimizing the things that went wrong. You begin to see the relationship for what it truly was instead of what you hoped it could be. That clarity helps you grow stronger and more self-aware. And as you focus on your own life, your own goals, your own happiness, you slowly become less dependent on their presence. You realize that the world didn't end when they left. You find new routines, you rediscover parts of yourself had you neglected. You start building a life that doesn't revolve around someone else's approval or attention. Meanwhile, the person who lost you begins to notice your absence in unexpected moments. They think about the way you used to support them, the way you listened without judgment, the way you showed up when others didn't. And without access to you anymore, those memories become louder. Sometimes the greatest message you can send is your absence, not out of anger, not out of pride, but out of self-respect. Because when you finally remove access to the version of you that was always available, you create space to become someone who is valued properly the next time around.